Do you have water?
Hello. Hi, Peter. How are you?
Hi, fine, thanks. How are you?
Good. Jason Whalen here.
Yes, hi. Luckily, everybody's image has a name tag, so that helps me out.
Oh, good. Yeah, good.
So Peter, before we get started, we're waiting just for a few people, but we'll start promptly. How much time have you allotted for your presentation portion?
Actually, I haven't timed it out. Probably 15 minutes.
Okay,
Perfect.
thank you.
Yeah, it's pretty concise, I think. So
Okay.
if I start rambling, just give me a
Okay.
nudge.
We have plenty of time, and we're just waiting for a few more people to come on.
Okay.
Oh, I speak English now. Okay.
Okay, we'll wait one more minute here. Hi, Lonnie. Okay, it's 5:04.
I can't get my AirPods to work, so thank you. And I'm in my car with my kid. There you go. Sorry, everybody.
That's life, right?
Right? Happy to be here.
Great. Happy to have you. So, Nikki, let's get started. As it's 5:04. And so, Peter, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for the opportunity.
See what you have, and we'll let you share your screen whenever you'd like.
Okay. You want me to go ahead and get started? Yeah, okay. Well, first of all, thanks everyone for taking the time to meet with me this evening, and hopefully you'll be responsive to my ideas and inspired by them. I spent quite a bit of time thinking about this project and working on these two different concepts, which are very different, but each one could be just as appropriate as the other, I think, for this project. Back in May, the other finalists and I had the opportunity to tour the Historical Society Museum, which was really useful. I discovered a lot of things there that I didn't come across in my internet research about Lakewood. And there were a couple of things that really inspired me and became sort of jumping off points for the two concepts that I'm going to share with you shortly here. And one of those is the Lakewood Theater itself, which of course, when I first visited the site, I saw the old theater entry, the classic symmetrical colonial facade. And I was kind of taken by the idea of there being a theater there, and was disappointed to learn that it's boarded up. Essentially, it's not going to be used as a theater probably ever again, unless somebody really gets inspired and has deep pockets to make that happen. But one of the ideas that I've come up with, I'll talk a little bit about, is inspired by the idea of the theater itself. And the other thing that I hadn't come across but found really fascinating was the Lakewood Speedway and its history. And being that the site is actually located on Motor Avenue, I found was a really interesting reference to that in and of itself. So I wanted to take those two concepts and develop them a little bit further. So let's start with the first one, which I'm calling stage set. The idea for this is to create a space that is a gathering place for people. And I'm going to share my screen now and give you a couple of images of some things I've been working on. So this is a site plan from Google Maps, and here's the theater building in the center. And then just off of the gray and red paver section is a blank, open, flat concrete plaza area. That's the area that I'm considering.
Am I the only one not seeing it?
Are you not seeing my screen?
I can see it.
You can see it. Okay.
I see
Lonnie,
it.
Lonnie can see it.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay.
Oh, got it. Sorry.
Everybody good? Okay, so this is one of the areas that was suggested could possibly be used for the art installation. And I understand that this property has private ownership, and so there may be some logistical hurdles to doing what I'm proposing, but let's not worry about that right now. I just want to present to you the concept. And actually, there is actually a better place for this, which would be out here in the front of the theater, where the theater becomes the backdrop. But I understand that that's really not a possibility. So let's look at this this is the area that we're looking at. So this piece I'm calling Stage Set started with a few sketches, just initial drawings of furniture pieces that would be placed on that space to create a quasi stage set. The idea being this is a place where there's going to be a lot of human interaction, especially during festival times when that street is closed off. We can have all sorts of activities going on in there. And my idea is to encourage people to interact with each other and to create these vignettes, or could be stage plays where they've actually written roles for acting out. And so these pieces become props essentially for that kind of interaction. So we took this original sketch, and I have a guy that works with me who does 3D CAD modeling, and he's really an expert at that. So he was able to take my drawings and create a 3D CAD model that gives us an idea of what the piece will really look like and the scale of it. So you can see here, there's a series of furniture pieces. There's a table and a couple of chairs, this little credenza. And on the other side, a pair of armchairs, a little table with a lamp, a bookcase, and this would be an open frame that is essentially a window looking out towards the street. This is a doorway that would be also a prop that creates an entry point to the space for the actors. So I envision this as being a stage set where just random people, or maybe even organized groups, are creating street theater for the public's enjoyment. And I envision this being, because there's a lot of open plaza space on both sides of this, there's a large gathering areas for an audience to observe whatever's going on in this space. It might be theater performance, it might be music performance, it might be spoken word. There are all sorts of art activities that people could create in that space. So I'm just providing them sort of a space to do that and some props to work with. So here's another view looking back. This is the theater building over here with the columns. So this is looking the other direction. So it's all very open, and it won't impede the foot traffic through the plaza very much, because people can walk right through it. There are no walls, it's open, but it can be used as a gathering place, and it can be used as a stage. Also, it occurred to me that when you're having a festival on this site, you might have an MC who's sort of controlling the flow of events at this festival. And this might be sort of a dais for that kind of announcement type thing, where it's a person speaking out to the public. So that's the first concept. And again, that was inspired by the Lakewood Theater itself. The second idea is inspired by the old Lakewood Speedway. And I was really fascinated with the history of that, and was able to find lots of really interesting information about the style of racing and the cars that were used and so on. And it's really fascinating. So this looking at our site plan again, and this would be located across Motor Avenue in that grass area, sort of around amidst those majestic oak trees. So then the whole plaza then becomes the backdrop for this artwork. And again, I start with some initial sketches, some just kind of working out scale and materials and design of how I want it to look. And then I work with my CAD guy to take these sketches and actually build something that looks more realistic. And here I've taken one of the sketches and just kind of placed it in the site as just a general idea of what this might look like. So, but the CAD model, of course, is much more precise, and it gives you a much better idea of what the actual piece would look like. So it's really a very stylized version of the board track race car. using the track itself as a pedestal for the sculpture. And it's just this, 1920s style open cockpit race car on a section of the track. You see these jagged ends indicating that it's just a section of the track that's been lifted out and placed on this pedestal. And here's another angle at that. We didn't have time, unfortunately, to draw in the actual background, but you can imagine that you're looking through this and looking at the plaza. One of the questions I was asked to consider was what kinds of materials and finishes and fabrication methods I would be using. And I'm proposing that either one of these sculpture ideas would be fabricated out of bronze, possibly some stainless steel to get a color contrast. But these materials are traditional, especially the bronze is a very traditional sculpture medium, and it's very durable in our marine climate, our salt air. It doesn't require any kind of a painted coating, which does not weather very well and requires much more maintenance. So bronze and stainless steel are very appropriate for this sort of thing because they don't need to be coated, and they don't require very much maintenance at all. I say not coated, they will have a wax coating that helps to protect the surface, but it doesn't have to be a painted surface. Paints don't do very well in long exposure to sunlight and heat, and so bronze is infinitely restorable. If it does get graffitied, for example, you can use solvents to remove that graffiti paint without damaging the underlying metal, and then recoat it with a new wax coating. So it's fairly easy to maintain and will last literally hundreds of years. We've all seen, bronze statues from antiquity that have been around for 1,000 years or more. So the processes I use is called TIG welding, which is something kind of a technical thing, I suppose, but you might be interested. It's an electric welding process that allows me to work with a variety of different metals, and I can use alloy matched welding rods so that all of the welded seams are completely invisible when they're finished. It's all the same material. So it makes for a really beautiful finished surface because it's all a continuous surface of one material. Let's see. And as far as the installation, this piece, of course, would have these concrete plinths that would be on an engineered concrete footing underneath the ground. And the furniture pieces in the stage set would have anchor pins welded to the bottoms of each of those furniture pieces that would get set in holes drilled in the concrete and set in an epoxy cement. So they become fixed in place. They're not the sort of thing that people can pick up and rearrange and of course walk off with. So they're intended to be placed and permanently installed. The other thing that I intend to do is incorporate some lighting into each of these, whichever one you might choose. So you notice that this stage set has a pair of lamps, and these would be functional lamps with LED lights in them, so that this actually becomes a more dramatic scene, and also can be used at, into the evening when the sun's gone down and we need a little bit more light to create this theater stage. So this piece would have the two lamps, and then the lights aren't shown in this model, but there would be some lights in the ground out in front of the sculpture that would shine on the sculpture to illuminate it at night. So as you're coming around the corner and onto Motor Avenue, or even just passing by on the main street, you would see this big illuminated sculpture be quite dramatic standing out there. And in both instances, I would be using LED lights, which are very low energy consuming and also very low maintenance. and last for an extremely long time. So, and I always use fixtures that are commercially made off the shelf UL listed fixtures. They're nothing custom. And that means that the parts are easily replaceable. The LED bulbs are readily available. In years past, I've incorporated lighting, as you may remember from some of my other projects. I've incorporated lighting in a lot of these things. And in the early days, I was working with an LED artist who did custom circuit boards with LEDs, and they're beautiful and could get some really interesting effects. But long term, that became complicated because they're custom made, and you can't just go to the store and buy another bulb and screw it in. So I haven't, for years now, I haven't been doing it that way. So everything is intended to be as low maintenance as possible and as simple and straightforward as it can be. So let's see. Checking my notes here, see if there's anything I've forgotten to mention. Oh, the budget. I know that the budget is $140,000 for one of these sculptures, and these are both doable within that amount. And it's difficult at this point to break the budget down into really minute detail, but I have done that to some degree, and I provided Sally with a PDF version of these notes that includes that budget. They're roughly this is fairly typical of the scale of these projects and things that I do. Roughly a third of the budget is materials alone, and roughly a third of it is labor, and everything else comes out of that other third, which includes things like engineering and transportation and installation and sales tax and all of those kinds of things. So these are both designed within that $140,000 budget. And then the last issue I was asked to address was the timeline. And maybe you have some specific questions about this, but I am currently working on a project for the Washington State Arts Commission, which is going into fabrication later this summer and will be installed sometime next spring. And that doesn't mean that I can't work on this piece until that's all done, because this process takes some time, and there's a lot that can be done during the same time period that I'm working on the other project. And things like fine tuning the design and working out, any adjustments that need to be made or details that aren't shown here. Those kinds of things. That kind of work can be done concurrently with other projects, as well as structural engineering and allocation of materials and all of that sort of thing. So there's a lot that can be done simultaneously, and then the fabrication phase would probably pick up sometime late winter, early spring next year when the other project is wrapping up, and with the intention of having it installed in Lakewood in probably the fall of 2022. It's hard to nail that down at this point, of course, but it's possible things could happen sooner. But realistically, projects of this scale on average take a year or so from the time of initial approval and signing of a contract to actual installation. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions you all might have, and I'm happy to pull up any of those images again if you want to see them again.
Thank you, Peter. That was wonderful. I'll open it up to the committee members for questions.
Well, I just like to make a comment. Thank you, Peter. I really enjoy your use of the different art forms together, the performing arts and the visual arts. I think it's very entertaining, and I think it would be really exciting to see street theater in front of the historic theater. I think that would be very apropos. And again, and I also love your racing car. That I think people forget how influential the 1920s have been of the 21st century.
For
so
sure.
I thought it was very clever, and I love the play on Motor Street. Whimsical and delightful. So I love both of your proposals, and I can see great potential in each of them.
Oh, well, thank you very much. That was obviously my intention, was to create two ideas that are different, but both really having something to say about the site and the history of it, and something directly connected to that place. These aren't pieces that could necessarily just be plopped down anywhere. They're really about that site.
Very much so. I can see them as a great community asset, great conversation pieces.
Great, thank you.
Jason?
Can you hear me okay, Peter?
Yes, go ahead.
So, yeah, thank you. Both great concepts, really appreciate it. I think you mentioned the Lakewood Speedway as part of the motivation for the race car. In terms of that particular project, I may have missed it, but what's the scale like on that compared to a person standing next to it?
Yeah, it's intended to be about life size. So
Got it. Okay.
So the car is probably 8 or 9 feet long, but the driver that's sitting in the car is human scale.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then on the lighting piece of it, is there a possibility to do something creative and maybe light some internal component so it either shines through the front grille or maybe the head of the person, or not that it has to do that, but I was just curious.
It's an interesting thought, and I had the same thought. In fact, it occurred to me that the headlights might be illuminated, but unfortunately, the way it's sighted, it would shine right out onto the main street.
Right.
So what I don't want to do is create any kind of a hazard. But I do want the piece to be visible after dark. So, but obviously there are many different approaches one could take on lighting, and I'm open to that.
The plinths on the bottom of that, are you anticipating that those would be a poured concrete, or could they be a stone of some sort?
My intention is to use poured concrete, and there might be, the way we've modeled it, there's some texture on it. So we've put, as if we've put rough sawn boards in the formwork to create sort of a wooden texture.
Got it.
If you notice the earliest sketch of that piece showed more of a trestle-like structure, which might have been the way they actually built the track, but it seemed awfully busy to me, and a place where leaves and trash could get trapped underneath there. Right. So I like the idea of sort of streamlining it, but I like too the idea of holding on to a little bit of reference of the wooden supports. So there's a wood texture in the concrete.
And then on the other proposal, how many of the pieces would you anticipate being able to do for the budget? The whole vignette, or a few of them?
That is my intention, is to do all of what I've shown you within the budget. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, one or the other, not the car and the stage, but
yeah, right. I get it. Yeah.
I know you knew that.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, Peter. Earl here. And Peter, I really liked both of the designs. I thought they were very intriguing, especially, the Speedway one, and then also the other one as well. And my main question for the stage one is, would each piece be individually fixed into the site, or would you be planning on pouring a solid foundation like a solid concrete square foundation, and then fixing each one of those pieces to the square foundation. You see where I mean?
I understand exactly what you mean. Each piece will be individually attached, so it's fixed in place. But the answer to the question whether we attach them to the existing concrete slab or have to cut that out and create a new monolithic concrete footing is one I really can't answer yet, because I don't know what the conditions are in the concrete that's there. So that's a question that will have to get answered during the engineering phase of this. But in either case, they will be anchored in place, each individual piece anchored, so none of them can be moved at all. Does that answer your question?
It does. Yeah. I mean, I was, because I wasn't sure how we were going to, attach them all, especially with the Sandset pavers there and everything. But that has to be. But I understand that you wouldn't be able to answer that at this point either. So
right, but it is not on the pavers, and there's that pattern of red and gray pavers, and this is not on that. This is on the concrete apron on the edge of that. So
okay, I see what you're saying.
Does that make sense? Let me see if I can pull up that image again, and maybe that will clarify.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, here, sorry. So, well, our model doesn't really show the red and gray pavers, but if you imagine a line somewhere parallel to these lines, but running back here somewhere, from this point back is the paver pattern. From that point forward is all what's existing there now is 2 foot by 2 foot grid of plain concrete.
Do you have the aerial view of the site handy that you had at the very beginning?
I do, yeah. So this sort of brownish color.
Yeah, those are the pavers.
This is all the pavers. And just at each end of that is a concrete area that has a 24-inch by 24-inch grid of white concrete.
Gotcha. Okay.
So that's the space we're looking at. So that image we were just looking at is standing here on the pavers and looking through the installation out onto this concrete apron.
Gotcha.
But I'll reiterate that the part I don't know the answer to is for sure is whether or not the pieces can be directly attached to what's there, or whether we have to dig some of that up and replace it with deeper concrete. My guess is that won't be necessary because these are not large, heavy pieces. But again, I'm not an engineer, so I need to defer to the engineer on that question.
Okay.
Okay.
And then another question I had is that, I feel that it's going to be very important in order for us to get the community engaged, that we should be able to create some media buzz around this and brand this whole entire experience, so to speak. So where would this be where would you be manufacturing this piece of art? Would the city of Lakewood be able to film it and turn it into some sort of a media kind of event over how this piece was made, how it was conceptualized, and where it was created and such?
Yes, that's great. You're thinking way ahead of me, but yes, I have a studio in Seattle, and I do all of my own fabrication. So I'm not farming this out to another shop to do. I fabricate the work myself in my studio in Georgetown, which is in South Seattle, right near Boeing Field. And as an example of what you're talking about, I did a project 2 years ago in Auburn, which you may remember is the giant crow eating a French fry.
Yeah.
And that they had similar wishes to, really get as much mileage out of that process and the sculpture as possible, and to bring as much attention to their program as possible. So I had multiple site visits from interested people within that committee and the arts community who came to the studio at different points and saw the progress of the piece. And a lot of that was videotaped, and I was discussing the process and showing them materials and showing them how things were going together and that sort of thing. And then the entire installation process was also filmed. So a lot of that footage is available on the City of Auburn's website, and you can get an idea of what we did for that. But it's exactly what you're talking about.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, not everybody in the community is always going to agree on one piece of art,
Mm-hmm.
but you can really get a lot of people in the community on board with the brand itself. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point. Well, plus a lot of people in the community won't even have any idea that this is going on unless you tell them.
Exactly.
So, right. So by doing that, then we maybe we can plant a seed that there's this opportunity for people to come out and perform, whether it's, I mean, it could be any art form, visual art, dance, music, theater, spoken word. I mean, I can just imagine all sorts of things happening there.
Mm-hmm. Hey, well, thank you very much. I greatly appreciate your time, and I loved both of the concepts.
Thank you very much.
Peter, while you have that site map up, can you show us again where the car might go?
Mm-hmm. I will just skip ahead to here. It's the same image, but the circle's moved over here. So this is across Motor Avenue, and it's that big grass area, and the big oak trees are in that site. And then over here is that the old closed off grocery store, just for reference.
Right.
Okay.
And Sally, do you know, while we're on this, whether that is on the city right-of-way area? It should be pretty darn close.
I believe we own all of that, Jason. I was under the impression we owned that grass and that park area.
Pretty close to it, yeah. So it's just something we would confirm in the process, obviously.
Right.
Right. Similarly, with the easement that we would need to
right on the if we went on the other side.
Mm-hmm. And the owners have indicated they would be open to that amendment, but that they would want to see the design, etc. if we got to that point. Great questions, and I have a few. One of it, which is you build these iconic pieces that are so, you just have this special way of really honing in on what speaks to the community, and these two obviously would do that. How do you envision from your past sculptures, how do you envision the public? It's easy to envision them interacting with the stage set. How do you envision them interacting, if you do see them interacting with the car? What do you know from your past experience would happen?
Well, that one's a little bit less interactive. At least the intention of it is less interactive. Okay. I think it's really probably going to be a selfie magnet, as people like to say. I do have a little bit of concern that people might want to be climbing on it.
For sure.
And that's part, and unfortunately, when you put work out in public, that is something that you have to take into consideration. Two things I can say about that, though. I mean, I can't make it climb proof without putting a fence around it. That's just, it's not possible. But two things. One is that the material, as I've mentioned before, is extremely durable, and it will not have a painted finish on it, which will, get all torn up by people climbing on it. And secondly, it's fairly low to the ground, so it's not, it's not a real severe hazard. Now, again, I can't prevent people from interacting with it in negative ways, but I try to design things that can withstand that kind of interaction. And the safety folks may have objections, and I get that, but I can only account for as much as I can account for.
And you've built other things similar. Have you had issues? Can you talk? I mean, history speaks a lot, especially when you've built similar things.
Well, I've actually had really good luck with the public embracing my work for the most part. And to my knowledge, nobody's ever been hurt by any of the sculptures. I'd feel terrible if that were to happen. But there have been a couple of pieces in locations that happen to be graffitied or damaged, and that's really rare, though. For the most part, people are pretty respectful of the artwork. And what I've tried to do is create work that's accessible and understandable. It's naturally, as someone else already pointed out, you can't please everyone. There will be people who don't like whatever you do, and I'm okay with that. But I also do make an effort to create work that people do respond to in a positive way.
Thank you. And then you mentioned the graffiti. Graffiti is quite common in this area, and it's a nice solid surface where you could really see what was tagged, and the graffiti artist will like that. You mentioned how to clean it. I couldn't quite hear you. Could you go through that process again?
Yeah, well, that's again, I reiterate that that's one of the reasons for using bronze, and maybe there, as I mentioned, there may be some stainless steel components, but either one of those can be restored very easily. You can use solvents like, for example, lacquer thinner to remove graffiti paint without damaging the underlying metal. And I'm proposing very simple brown patina as opposed to multiple chemical colored patinas, because keeping it one tone also makes it much more maintainable. So really the only maintenance required is to clean it once a year or so and reapply a wax coating. And then if there is graffiti, then you have to use a solvent to remove the wax, and then in most cases the paint will come with that wax coating, so the wax becomes a sacrificial coating. But if it's deeper than that, you may have to do a little bit of burnishing with a Scotch-Brite pad and some solvent, but it won't destroy the base metal.
Wonderful. Thank you. Those are my questions. Anybody else?
Just a quick one on the maintenance issue again. So if you get some crazy person who brings a sharp object and wants to scratch initials into the bronze, is that pretty easy to buff out, or relatively easy?
Well, relatively easy, yes. That's a level of damage that's obviously a little bit more severe than
Right.
graffiti markers. But yes, the material can be sanded out and re-patinaed and resealed with wax.
Got it.
There will be some thickness to the material. The wall thickness of the car, for example, will be 1/8 inch to 3/16 inch thick material. So chances are there's not going to be any gouging that's deep enough to actually risk the structural integrity of the metal itself. So, but yeah, hopefully we won't have to be doing that.
Right. Well, we have an existing bronze piece that has not been damaged on the corner of Washington and Gravely. So
that's such a good point, Jason.
Yeah.
Lonnie,
people respect it.
Yeah, I made a conscious choice many years ago to pursue public art as opposed to a different kind of art career where I do gallery museum shows on a regular basis, for the exact reason that I want the work to be out there and accessible to the public. I want to reach an audience that isn't necessarily an art audience, in quotes. I want my work to be available and accessible to people who have no knowledge or background in art. And so that's why I've chosen to do work in the public sphere. And with that comes some risk. I try to build things that are very durable and well crafted, and they can be repaired. And I mean, I've been doing this for 35 years, and I've never, well, I've just about to say I never had to replace anything, but that isn't true. I had, I actually had a sculpture stolen, and I had a sculpture run over by a drunk driver, and that had to be completely rebuilt from scratch. But those are very rare instances.
Lonnie, did you have something?
Peter, I just want to say I love both of your proposals. They're amazing. I love the idea of the lamps in the theater setting. Just the way that would transition from day to night would be epic. And to the committee, I think it's interesting, even with the race car, which seems more of a statue compared to interactive, I could see, it's just interesting, like I'm trying to grab onto something like the pig that's at the farmer's market in Pike Place. The polished edges where somebody has sat with that sculpture to have a photograph taken. I could absolutely see that happening with a race car too.
Yeah, I can see that too.
Yeah, all the and on the armchairs where people are sitting, and because people have been there for so long, and worn it. Yeah,
the surfaces get burnished from people touching them. In the previous images, I think you might have seen project I did in Juneau, Alaska, that was a memorial to Japanese and Japanese Americans who were incarcerated during World War II. And it's actually has a similar floor look to the section of racetrack on this piece, but there's a bronze folding chair there, and people step up onto this platform and sit in that chair. And in the space where they walk, there's a burnished area in the front of the chair, and the surface, the edges of the chair become burnished and polished from all the interaction. And to me, that adds so much character. And you know that people have responded to it. And that's a good thing. That's what it's there for.
Is the height of the platform on which it sits, that looks like pieces of wood from the raceway, is that low enough that people could sit on it? What is that?
Yeah. Let me, where's my image again here? And
I was going to add on to Lonnie, if people did take their picture in front of it, it'd be like, oh, that's Lakewood. It would become that way. Like, oh, that's Lakewood.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it looks like 3 to me, 2, 3.
It's about 2 feet, 2 to 2.5 feet. So yeah, people could lean against it or sit on here. And
kids climbing on that and sitting with the racer, and oh yeah.
Well, I could make it much more interactive by leaving the driver out and creating a space where people could sit in it, but doing that encourages that, which I'm not sure I really want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Just from a safety standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Any other
hey, Peter, questions? I had a question. So the Lakewood Speedway one, that would be kind of placed in the Gary Oaks section, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. So there's been some, discussion about highlighting the Gary Oaks in some manner. If the city really wanted to highlight that area in the Gary Oaks, would we be able to incorporate that into your piece somehow? I'm trying to think of, maybe within the budget, of course, but maybe some low cost lighting where it would be maybe like a ribbon of the track coming from the trees going to the car itself, or something similar, to where to where like, because you don't want to light up all of the Gary Oaks and have it take away from the car. You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an interesting idea. Certainly worth exploring. Um, I don't think that necessarily lighting the trees would detract in any negative way from the artwork. I think that actually might be quite beautiful and would draw people into that site, and then the sculpture becomes more of an iconic element within that site.
Yeah.
In other words, not necessarily a literal connection between the trees and the sculpture, but but creating an environment where they coexist.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, the thought on that was, using it as a natural gateway. So you've got these Gary Oaks, and so just lighting them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those trees are magnificent. It's wonderful to see those big trees.
Yeah, it could be kind of a neat thing to have that area kind of integrated a little bit.
Jason, you're cutting out.
And then Peter, throw in a few little bronze leaves on the base of the track there. That kind of ties in with another Gary Oak sort of flavor.
Sure. Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't hear all of your comments. Your audio was cutting out some there, but yeah.
Is that better?
That is better, yeah.
Oh, I was just saying, just being a little whimsical, if you did the integration with the Gary Oaks, you might throw a few bronze oak leaves on the track just to kind of tie in the whole thing there. Might be kind of a cute, whimsical way to do it.
That's an idea too, sure.
We've got oak leaves over on the Sound Transit station. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I like it. They're both great concepts. It would be interesting to see how the lighting would work on that, on the Speedway track as kind of a gateway piece.
Yeah, again, it's my intention was to put some lighting on it, but it could, as somebody brought up,
I like it.
Could also be integrated into the sculpture itself in some way.
Sounds good.
Anybody else? Any last comments? Questions?
Well, if there are no other questions, I just want to say thank you all for taking the time to listen to my proposals, and hopefully you'll be inspired by them enough to select me as the artist. I would be thrilled to do either one of these pieces. I think the stage set, appeals to me more in terms of it being an interactive piece and more directly connected to the community, which I think is really a goal. But I think it would be quite fun also to build that race car. So if you select either one of them, I'll be very happy.
Thank you. And thank you so much for doing your research and going to the Historical Society.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Peter.
And would everyone please stay on and we'll have a discussion. Bye. Thank you.
Okay. Bye. Thank you.
Take care.
I almost feel like it's the polar opposite of last night. So tell me what you think.
I liked both concepts. I mean, I liked the stage idea. I could see a lot of potential of how that could definitely be used for the space. And I did like the Speedway one as well. I mean, I know the Historical Society's got like a whole central draw going on, or with the Speedway already, so that would be something that they would be probably really interested in, if that would be a tie-in. But I greatly appreciated how he took the time to research our community, and he picked out 2 facts that interested him the most from his research. And so That was one thing I really appreciated about it.
Any other insights or thoughts?
So Sally, I had a question, and Jason, you could probably address this too. When he was asked about both, whether he saw them as dual pieces, perhaps, which I actually do, he said prohibitively that he didn't see that as a possibility. Is that something that was presented to him, or do you think it was because of the scope of the materials and labor and the incidentals that he just doesn't think that's feasible to have even a scaled down version, say, of the stage set, and as a supporting piece and as a tie-in to the Tacoma Speedway piece? I see them as co-equal pieces that, as Earl said, draw really well with what the Historical Society is trying to do, to try to get young people to understand a little bit of the history of Lakewood, and to help answer some of these questions. And if you're on site and you see one and you see the other, well, it seems to me that it would be in everyone's interest to be able to shine light on both of those really iconic parts of Lakewood. I remember going to the theater in the late 60s, early 70s, and the raceway is obviously important because it's on the side of Clover Park Technical College, and as a faculty member, we enjoy discussing that history in addition to other things that have happened on the site. So it's a great tie-in to the community, I think, to have him think about maybe both pieces, even if it's a scaled down version of that. But if it's prohibitive to think that way, that's fine too. But the moment I saw them as co-equal pieces.
I have a question about, is there a plan to keep the theater like a theater? I mean, so the pieces that he puts out front I thought that the wanting to change up some of the businesses possibly that come into the plaza area, and also we wanted to rename it. So I like the historical aspect of the race cars, but it plays nothing into the possibility of calling it Unity something or anything like that. So just my questions. I'm sorry I was late.
Good point.
My thought, I don't know if you guys can hear me, but I'm on a bus coming back from the airport. My thought on the staging is interesting because it's interactive, but my fear is that those pieces will get lost on that end of the plaza. You will never see it as you drive in from Gravelly Lake unless you drive through the plaza. And in the rare instances when we actually do something out there, then it might get used. But right now, it would be lost. And I know that we're not focused on the now, we're focused on the future. But I'm very concerned that small little pieces like that, while interactive, don't create a draw for the area.
Yeah, you're right.
I agree with you on that. Very much so.
Yeah, I think they're small little pieces that would be fun for the homeless to sit around and enjoy, for the most part.
I hate to set up places where people could park and camp out.
Yeah.
And that's all that screams to me is like, oh, well, now there's a place for us to, post up. And then, and I do like the race car idea, but again, I don't think it plays into any of the unity and community and the renaming of the plaza unless it got renamed to a name that has to focus on, the raceway or the motor.
Yeah, my thought too, Patty, on that. Yeah, I love the historical angle of it. I love the substance. I mean, it's very nice and weighty. It's a great piece. It does speak to Lakewood's history. But for me, it didn't create that inspirational feel that last night's iconic pieces could, in my mind. But that's just me.
Right. I agree with you on that.
Susan, can you weigh in on this a little bit?
Well, they're two very different artists with two very different approaches. I think, Peter's work is whimsical, interactive, I went to thinking about how young people would use the interactive stage set and how much fun. I mean, you might have to, if one was to go with that particular piece, one might have to program it initially to help people understand that this is for them to play with. And you just give them a couple of examples of how that can be done. And hopefully then, young people would really gravitate to it and have fun with it. And then, thinking about yesterday's presentation, the possibilities of those ideas are definitely iconic when you think about Lakewood and the environment of Lakewood. So, we as a committee will have to grapple with this after we've seen the third proposal about what kind of statement are we really wanting to have for our city.
True. Yeah, very true.
I'm going to hold judgment
until and Susan, I still really loved your picture on the artist last night and your take on the endangered species in this area. I mean, I still kind of go back.
Yeah, there's a very strong environmental justice statement one could be making if one wanted to.
Can I make a comment? This is Sylvie. So I came in late and all I saw was the race car driver. When I first saw the race car driver, I saw a male, and I don't know if it was a male figure in there, but if you're striving for inclusivity, having a male piece of art is just one more male piece of art. But yesterday's presentation was all inclusive and inspiring, and I enjoyed that one much more.
I think that's a great point, and that's kind of what I was going for, definitely, about it. So, good point.
Thanks.
I will just say, historically, there were female race car drivers in the 1920s, just a few of them. I'm not sure if they were in Lakewood, but they were around.
Oh, I don't doubt that, but just looking at the piece of art, it looked to me to be a male.
I agree with you there.
And remember, these are concepts that can be tweaked as needed. Yeah, well, lots to think about.
Sally, what do you think? I mean, part of the challenge too with the location of the interactive staging is we don't own that. We'd have to get the easement for that. I wonder if we could locate it maybe either in one of the parking stall spots, which we own. It'd be easier to drill into the concrete there than it would be on the plaza. And I wonder if it would have the same utility.
I hadn't thought of that. Then you're awfully close to the road too.
You would be, yeah.
Yeah. And one place you can use it, whether the road's closed or not, and the other you
True. Yeah, very true.
I love what he says about engaging people where they are, and being really accessible. But there's pros and cons to all this art. This to me seems much easier to graffiti than what we saw last night, but I think his is also much more durable than what we saw last night. And there's a certain point which I felt like last night will age out a little bit. I don't know what it'll need, but I think that comes with the territory too. So
yeah, stainless is pretty durable, but the acrylic or polymeric or whatever that stuff is might age over time. Who knows?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I would like to just throw out as well, we've been having dialogues, and then we have one more tomorrow, and then we have our meeting Tuesday. Do you want to have any type of a voting form, or maybe you could put some thought into what you think a good process for that might be, if it's just coming to a dialogue together and then voting on it as a group, or having individuals vote? And is that just our committee and we present? I think maybe the Arts Commission is expecting us to present to them the choice and explain how we got there, but any thoughts on that?
We have elements from the presentation guidelines to the artists that we could kind of make a point scale for. They get so many points that they hit the history or the research and durability and concept and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Is the meeting next Tuesday in person?
Not
Should be.
now, but
It could be. I was just wondering because council's meeting in chambers.
Oh,
So,
It wouldn't be nice to see all of you again.
yeah.
Nikki, is that a possibility?
Yeah, actually, Brianna encouraged in person, but still allowing the possibility of Zoom for certain people if they would still
Oh,
Zoom.
well, I would say yes, absolutely. In person would be great.
I don't know if I want to see all of you just yet.
Oh
Thanks,
my gosh, we're
Earl.
not going to get any work done. We'll just be chitty chatty.
Yeah. We need to turn it into a potluck. Let's go, folks.
Actually, Patty and Jason, you might be able to speak more to it, because isn't the council passing the resolution on Monday night for in-person meetings?
I think that I don't think so. I think that the OPA, like it's the open public meeting stuff, is all good to go and everything because of Washington opens up on the 30th. So I would check probably with John, but I think it's good to go.
I do too.
Yeah,
We're
and the building
certainly
will
not
be
going to
open.
run afoul of anybody. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Nikki,
I might hug all of you.
not
Just
in person.
fair warning.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Well, I think this is another good evening. So tomorrow night we've got, I forget the gentleman, Larry, is it? Or what's his name?
Fleming.
John Fleming. That's right. That'll be great.
Well.
Well, I'm almost home. I'm at the Tacoma Dome station. I'm riding the bus, the 574.
Oh, you're coming
love doing.
back from, okay, I got
Yes.
you.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah, that is the easiest bus ride.
The transit is great.
I love it.
Well, thank you
I
so
love
much.
it.
And remember, you can always send me emails with any comments, thoughts that you didn't share, that you think of later.
Okay.
That sounds
Okay,
great.
thank you.
Awesome. Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank-
Bye.